It takes a certain kind of person to live in the public eye. Even our most beloved celebrities can grow tired of all that attention and adoration, and the inability to go anywhere in public without causing a scene that comes with it. But public figures like the ones we'll be looking at today must put up with an extra special brand of notoriety, the kind which comes from being an absolutely terrible person, and seemingly not caring who knows it. They've gotten the public's attention in all the wrong ways, but don't feel too bad for them. They've all done their part to earn their spots on this list of the 10 most hated people in America. Bill Cosby has the distinction of having once been one of the most beloved people in America. As the star of the smash hit 80s sitcom The Cosby Show, he was America's dad, coming into our living rooms once a week to dispense sage advice, throw out corny one-liners, and generally show us just how parenting should be done, while rocking an unbelievable succession of some of the ugliest sweaters ever made. He was also widely known as the wholesome face of Jell-O pudding, but in recent years, Cosby's public image has been flipped completely upside down by sexual assault allegations leveled at him by dozens of accusers. One common thread runs through all of their stories, that Cosby assaulted them after drugging their drinks, behavior that some of his accusers say began as early as 1965. He allegedly continued drugging and assaulting acquaintances on a regular basis throughout his entire career, all while collecting accolades as one of the most squeaky clean Hollywood success stories ever. Since 2014, more than 60 women have accused Cosby of assault, but his trial on rape charges ended in a mistrial in June 2017. He's scheduled to be retried sometime this year, but even if he manages to secure an acquittal, the damage to his reputation and public image has been incalculable. Reruns of The Cosby Show have been pulled from the airwaves across the country, and his sponsorships and speaking engagements have all dried up. Matt Lauer carved out a career as one of the friendliest and most trustworthy faces on television, co-anchoring NBC's Today Show for 2 decades while also holding down a yearly gig as co-host of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. But his long tenure as one of America's favorite journalists came to a swift end in 2017, as he too was hit with allegations of sexual misconduct by multiple female acquaintances. Lauer's unnamed initial accuser alleged that the harassment had begun while she was in Sochi covering the 2014 Olympics with Lauer, and had continued when they returned home. A swift investigation by NBC gave them reason to believe that it was not an isolated incident, and stories began to leak to the press about Lauer's tendency to make crass remarks, expose himself to female employees, and carry on inappropriate relationships. He was fired from Today at lightning speed, and his wife of 20 years, with whom he has 3 children, has filed for divorce after initially supporting Lauer in the wake of his firing. She got her big break in the 1995 comedy classic Clueless, but these days Stacey Dash is more well known for the clueless things that tend to fly out of her mouth. After being a vocal supporter of Barack Obama during the 2008 presidential election, Dash made waves when she defected to the Republican Party in 2012, throwing her support behind candidate Mitt Romney. As both a woman and an African American, 2 groups the Republican Party has not historically been exactly friendly to, Dash puzzled and even angered some fans with her switch in allegiances, but the strangeness was only beginning. In the years since, Dash has become increasingly outspoken with her political views, most of which can politely be described as backwards. She joined the famously right-leaning Fox News as a contributor on the program Outnumbered, where she has espoused such enlightened views as comparing anti-racism protesters to ISIS, and suggesting that transgender people should just go to the bathroom in the bushes. She's also infuriated her black fans by advocating for the abolition of Black History Month, on the grounds that there is no month celebrating white history, which of course completely ignores obvious realities of racial dynamics in America. Dash was suspended by Fox News in 2015 for using an on-air expletive, and was officially fired in early 2017. But her racist, misogynist rants won't soon be forgotten, and she won't be giving up the title of most hated woman in America anytime soon. Hall of Fame running back and beloved TV and film personality O.J. Simpson shattered his image and the public's trust in him in one of the most appalling ways imaginable. Most everyone knows that O.J. was accused of the brutal murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman, and was acquitted in the trial of the century in the mid-90s. Most casual observers will also remember that he was found liable and ordered to pay millions to Goldman's family in a civil trial, that he wrote an infamous shelved book titled If I Did It, and was slapped with a jail sentence for the armed robbery of a sports memorabilia collector in 2008. The public's disdain for Simpson has largely died down in the years since, except that he is now out of jail, infuriating observers all over again. The state of Florida, where Simpson made his home before his arrest, has been quite clear that they don't want him back. The state's attorney general went so far as to tell the Florida Department of Corrections that he is not welcome, saying that the state should not become a country club for this convicted criminal. Not that they necessarily have a choice. Simpson's attorneys have said that he may return to Florida or perhaps Las Vegas, where he was convicted of the robbery. or even LA, where the infamous murders occurred. Nobody is saying for sure, because even though he's now 70 years old, nobody wants the man who almost certainly carried out two of the most savage, high-profile killings of all time anywhere near their neighborhood. Before the FCC's recent vote on whether to repeal Obama-era net neutrality laws, practically nobody had ever heard of the commission's chairman, Ajit Pai. His rise into the ranks of America's most hated people has been nothing short of meteoric, thanks to his part in the vote to repeal, against the wishes of the vast majority of the American public, and his almost comically villainous response to the backlash. Net neutrality laws serve to protect the internet's content providers, keeping service providers from favoring one type of content over another. For example, charging more for Netflix or YouTube or certain e-commerce websites. The obvious favoring of big business over the consumer didn't sit well with the public, to say the least, and Pai, as the face of the repeal effort, did absolutely nothing to calm their fears. In fact, after the repeal, he stoked the flames of the public's hatred for him even higher, with the release of an unbelievably ridiculously tone-deaf video, in which he condescendingly reassures the public of all the things they'll still be able to use the internet for, like Instagramming their meals and watching cat videos. Of course, nobody had ever disputed that, and his steadfast refusal to acknowledge how the death of net neutrality would screw over the public caused his video to be widely seen as outright mocking, or even gloating. Pai has since claimed that he and his family have been harassed and threatened over the vote, which is never an appropriate response to anything. But it seems silly to think that he didn't know that he was making a target of himself by ticking off literally every American who uses the internet, and then rubbing it in their faces for good measure. Almost as quick to join the ranks of America's most hated was Martin Shkreli, who in 2015 instantly became the poster boy for the tendency of pharmaceutical corporations to value profits over human lives. The founder and CEO of Turing Pharmaceutical, Shkreli made international news when his company obtained the manufacturing license for a vital antiparasitic drug, and promptly raised the price from $13 to $750 for a single pill. The decision was roundly criticized by every significant pharmaceutical association, not to mention every candidate who had entered the 2016 presidential election at the time, including Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump. Shkreli didn't help matters by initially defending the price hike, then pledging to reverse it, then changing his mind about that as well. In late 2015, Shkreli finally made the kind of news the public wanted to hear by getting arrested on an 8-count indictment for securities fraud related to his siphoning funds from one of his pharmaceutical companies to pay investors in several hedge funds he ran, in what prosecutors call a Ponzi scheme. Known for his smirking, privileged public demeanor, Shkreli became widely known as the man with the most punchable face in America, and the public could hardly contain their glee at the prospect of that face being carted off to prison. He was convicted in late 2017 of 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of conspiracy, and is currently incarcerated while awaiting sentencing. There's simply no getting around the fact that as a film producer, Harvey Weinstein is a legend. As co-founder with brother Bob of Miramax Films and later the Weinstein Company, Weinstein has a filmography a mile long as a producer or executive producer. His companies have launched the careers of directors like Steven Soderbergh, Gus Van Sant, and Quentin Tarantino, racking up a slew of awards and producing far too many classic films to mention. The Weinstein brothers themselves largely stayed out of the public eye until 2017, when Harvey found himself in the middle of a titanic shift in attitudes towards sexual harassment in the workplace. It began with a New York Times expose published in early October, in which several actresses, including Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan, alleged decades of inappropriate sexual behavior by Weinstein. Within 3 days, Weinstein had been fired from his own company, and shortly afterwards, The New Yorker published a piece in which 13 more women came forward with allegations of their own, including 3 who accused Weinstein of outright rape. Authorities are currently investigating the mountain of accusations leveled against Weinstein, whose public downfall has been nothing short of dizzying. In the wake of the scandal, countless women have come forward to speak out on the ongoing culture of sexual abuse in Hollywood, which has had similarly drastic career repercussions for dozens of powerful men, including the likes of Kevin Spacey, Danny Masterson, and Louis C.K. But no matter how many men are eventually held accountable for their boorish and often criminal behavior, Harvey Weinstein will always be remembered as the first, and perhaps the worst, the ultimate symbol of Hollywood abuse and privilege. MILO YIANNOPOULOS is a British blogger, political commentator, and former Breitbart news editor who has seemingly only ever had one purpose in life: to offend anyone and everyone. A gay man, he has paradoxically criticized homosexuality as a sinful lifestyle choice. He has equated feminism with terrorism, advocated for the forced deportation of everybody from Muslims to fat people, and leveled racist attacks against actress Leslie Jones, who is black. Still, his confrontational style and dedication to dismantling what he saw as political correctness run amok found him an audience, and for a time it seemed that each new inflammatory, outrageous remark just raised his profile higher, until he finally crossed a line that absolutely nobody in their right mind would ever cross. In February 2017, an obscure year-old podcast interview resurfaced in which Yiannopoulos suggested that sex between young boys and adult men was not that big a deal, using his own experience as an example, and implying that some children were capable of giving consent. The response was swift, brutal condemnation across the entire spectrum of media. Yiannopoulos attempted to backtrack, holding a press conference to clarify that he had been abused as a youngster, and had simply chosen an inappropriately humorous way to deal with it, an excuse which rang incredibly hollow, especially when internet sleuths began digging up similar comments he had made in the past. Book publisher Simon & Schuster canceled the publication of Yiannopoulos' autobiography, and he was pushed out of Breitbart News in the wake of the scandal. Yiannopoulos has been uncharacteristically silent since, perhaps finally realizing that there is indeed a time when one should just stop talking. The current Republican administration, who have supposedly been running the show in Washington since Inauguration Day 2017, have done very little to endear themselves to the public in the months since. While there are a number of staunchly conservative Americans who agree with their agenda of severely restricting immigration, trying to trash Obamacare, and throwing money at corporations in the form of tax cuts and favorable legislation, polls consistently show that the majority of Americans disapprove of virtually all of the legislation that the president, his cabinet, and congressional Republicans have attempted to enact. And they've also alienated many of their supporters by failing in most of these attempts, despite controlling both houses of Congress. The recent wave of sexual misconduct allegations has also touched Congress, and it certainly doesn't help the public's perception of the president's cabinet that an unprecedented number of them have either resigned or been fired in the short time since President Trump moved into the West Wing. Many of them, like former chief strategist Steve Bannon, were controversial to begin with, and many if not most of the new administration's policies seem downright hostile, like the decision to roll back immigration policies that would allow amnesty for the children of illegal immigrants, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions' reversal of Obama-era non-interference policies with state marijuana laws. The current Republican administration's seeming eagerness to go against the will of the majority of Americans on nearly every issue has made them among the most hated people in the country. But that's only to be expected, as they serve under the most alarmingly divisive and unpredictable president in American history. Donald Trump campaigned for president on a platform of xenophobia, bigotry, and fear, and enough Americans bought his promise to improve the economy that he was able to ride the prejudices and fears of a great segment of the American population all the way to a narrow victory in the 2016 election, in which he lost the popular vote to Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. Since then, Trump has kept some campaign promises while seemingly ignoring others, just like lots of presidents do. But Trump has also managed to project a public image to America and the world of supreme incompetence, and a profound lack of understanding of international diplomacy, coupled with a deep-seated arrogance that may make him the most dangerous man ever to sit in the Oval Office. Trump's capacity for bald-faced lying tops the most shameless politicians history has to offer. A January 2018 article in Esquire magazine pointed out his 2,000th lie since taking office, and he's been one of the only presidents ever to take a directly adversarial relationship with America's intelligence agencies, such as the FBI and CIA, which is understandable. They have concluded that the Russian government conducted a sophisticated and successful cyber campaign to influence the 2016 election in his favor, and Trump himself has been under investigation for improper ties to Russia since well before he was elected. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller was appointed last year as a special counsel to investigate any and all improper activities by Trump and his associates, up to and including money laundering, obstruction of justice, and colluding with a hostile foreign power. And several former cabinet members have been charged, many of whom are cooperating with the investigation. Nearly two-thirds of Americans disapprove of the president's job performance, and the majority believe that the Trump campaign did indeed collaborate with one of our country's greatest historical adversaries to put them in power. Only once in recent history has a sitting president so provoked the ire of the American people. His name was Nixon, and it didn't end well.